What actually happens to your body after 16 hours of fasting? Not what people say online, not the simplified version, but what is really happening inside your body, minute by minute, hormone by hormone. Because most people think that after 16 hours without food, your body is automatically burning fat at full speed. But that's not always true. And the difference between those who get results and those who don't comes down to what's happening inside their system during those hours. Let me explain exactly how this process works. When you stop eating, your body doesn't immediately switch into fat-burning mode. It follows a sequence, a transition, and each phase depends on what you ate before, how your hormones respond, and how metabolically flexible your body is. In the first few hours after your last meal, your body is still using glucose from that meal. Your insulin levels are elevated, and your body is in storage mode. This can last anywhere from 3 to 6 hours, sometimes longer depending on the composition of your meal. Then, as time passes, insulin begins to drop. Your body starts using stored glycogen, the energy stored in your liver and muscles. This is your short-term energy reserve. At this stage, you're not really burning fat yet. You're transitioning. Now here's where things begin to change. Around 10 to 12 hours into fasting, glycogen stores start to decline. Your body begins to look for an alternative source of energy. And this is when fat starts to become more accessible. But accessible does not mean dominant. This is where most people misunderstand the process. Just because your body can use fat doesn't mean it is using fat efficiently. For that to happen, insulin needs to be low enough, for long enough, for your body to fully shift into fat-burning mode. And that brings us to the 16-hour mark. At around 16 hours, for many people, the metabolic switch becomes more active. Your body increases fat oxidation. Ketone production begins to rise. Your brain starts using a mix of glucose and ketones for energy. This is where many of the benefits of fasting begin to appear. But, and this is important, this only happens if the conditions are right. If your last meal kept insulin elevated for too long, if your fasting window is interrupted, if your body is under constant stress, you may never fully reach this state, so you can fast for 16 hours and still not experience the full benefits. Have you ever fasted for long periods and still felt tired, foggy, or like nothing was really changing? If that sounds familiar, then what you're about to understand next will change how you approach fasting completely. Because in the next part, we're going to break down what happens after 16 hours in more detail, and why this phase can either unlock fat burning or keep you stuck in the same cycle. Now let's go deeper into what really happens around that 16-hour mark, because this is where most people either unlock fat burning or stay stuck without realizing why. At this stage, your body is no longer relying primarily on glucose. Glycogen levels are lower, insulin has dropped, and your system is starting to shift toward using stored fat as fuel. This is the transition point. But here's the key detail most people miss. This is not an on-off switch. It's not like a simple switch. It's a very gradual shift. And how strong that shift is depends entirely on your internal environment. If insulin is low enough, your body increases fat oxidation. This means it starts breaking down stored fat into fatty acids, which can then be used for energy. At the same time, your liver begins producing ketones, molecules derived from fat that serve as an alternative fuel, especially for your brain. This is where people often report increased mental clarity, more stable energy, and reduced hunger. But again, not everyone experiences this, and here's why. If your body is still dependent on glucose, if your metabolism hasn't adapted, or if your fasting window is not clean, this shift remains weak. You stay in a partial state. Not fully fed, but not fully burning fat either. And that's why some people feel worse during fasting instead of better. They feel tired, irritable, foggy, not because fasting is wrong, but because their body hasn't fully transitioned. Now there's another important change happening around this time. Your hunger hormones begin to stabilize. Many people expect hunger to keep increasing the longer they fast. But that's not how it works. Hunger often comes in waves, and after a certain point, it actually decreases. This is because your body begins to rely more on internal energy sources instead of external ones. And when that happens, the urgency to eat fades. This is one of the first signs that your body is becoming metabolically flexible. Now let's talk about something even more interesting. After around 16 hours, your body may begin to activate certain cellular processes related to repair and efficiency. One of these processes is called autophagy. This is where your body starts cleaning out damaged or unnecessary components inside your cells, recycling them for energy or rebuilding. But here's the important part. Autophagy is not a switch that turns on at exactly 16 hours. It's a spectrum. And how much it's activated depends on factors like how often you fast, your diet, your activity level, and your metabolic state. So again, time alone doesn't determine the outcome. Your internal environment does. Let me ask you something important. When you reach 16 hours of fasting, do you feel stable, clear, and in control? Or do you feel drained, foggy, and counting the minutes until you can eat? Because that difference tells you everything about what's happening inside your body. In the next part, I'm going to show you how to actually reach this fat-burning state consistently, what you need to adjust before your fast begins, and how to make sure those 16 hours actually work the way they're supposed to. Now let's make those 16 hours actually work, because reaching 16 hours of fasting is not the goal. Getting your body into a real fat-burning, stable energy state is. And that only happens when you prepare your body correctly before the fast even begins. So here's how to do it the right way. Step 1, fix your last meal. This is where everything starts. Your final meal determines how quickly your body will transition during the fast. If that meal is high in sugar, refined carbohydrates, or ultra-processed foods, your insulin stays elevated for hours. That delays the entire process. So even if you fast for 16 hours, your body may spend most of that time still in storage mode. But when your last meal is built around protein, healthy fats, and fiber, insulin stays lower and more stable. This allows your body to transition into fat-burning mode much earlier. This one change alone can transform how your fasting feels. Step 2, protect your fasting window. Most people think they're fasting, but they're constantly interrupting the process. A flavored drink, a small snack, a sweetened coffee. These seem harmless, but they trigger an insulin response. And the moment insulin rises, fat burning stops. So if you want those 16 hours to actually work, your fasting window needs to be clean. Water, black coffee, plain tea, nothing else. This is what allows your body to stay in a fat-burning state long enough to make a difference. Step 3, stop forcing it. This is one of the biggest mistakes. People think they need to push through hunger, fatigue, and discomfort to make fasting work. But if your body is not ready, forcing longer fasting windows increases stress. And when stress rises, cortisol increases, which can interfere with fat loss and energy stability. Instead of forcing 16 hours, build up to it. Let your body adapt. Because once your system becomes more flexible, those 16 hours feel natural, not exhausting. Step 4, break your fast the right way. This is where most people undo everything. After fasting, your body is sensitive. If you break your fast with sugar or refined carbs, you create a sharp spike in insulin, and your body shifts straight back into storage mode. Instead, start with protein. Add healthy fats, include fiber. This combination stabilizes your blood sugar and allows your body to transition without shutting down fat burning completely. Step 5, manage your internal environment. This is the hidden layer. If your sleep is poor, if your stress is high, if your body is constantly under pressure, fasting becomes harder and less effective because your body is trying to protect you, not burn fat. So before pushing harder, stabilize your system. Sleep better, reduce unnecessary stress. Use fasting as a tool, not as a punishment. And here's what happens when you do this right. Those 16 hours feel different. Your energy becomes stable. Your mind becomes clearer. Hunger fades instead of increasing. And your body finally starts to use fat the way it's supposed to. In the final part, I'm going to show you the most common mistakes people make even after reaching 16 hours. And why those mistakes keep them from seeing real results. Now here's the final piece. And this is where most people finally realize why 16 hours of fasting didn't give them the results they expected. Because reaching 16 hours is not the breakthrough. What you do around those 16 hours is. And this is where the most common mistakes happen. The first mistake is thinking that reaching 16 hours guarantees fat loss. It doesn't. If your body never fully entered fat-burning mode during that window, those hours don't mean what you think they mean. You followed the clock, but your biology didn't follow with you. The second mistake is breaking your fast in a way that cancels everything. After 16 hours, your body is sensitive, ready to respond. And if you break your fast with sugar, refined carbs, or ultra-processed foods, you create a sharp insulin spike. Your body immediately shifts back into storage mode, and it takes hours to return to fat-burning mode again. So instead of building momentum, you reset the entire process. The third mistake is ignoring how you feel during the fast. This is one of the most important signals your body gives you. If you reach 16 hours and feel clear, stable, and focused, your body is adapting. But if you feel drained, foggy, and desperate to eat, your system is not aligned yet, and pushing harder won't fix it. Adjusting your approach will. The fourth mistake is inconsistency. You fast one day, skip the next. You reach 16 hours sometimes, but not others. Your body never stabilizes. It never adapts fully. And without consistency, your system stays in transition, never reaching efficiency. The fifth mistake is expecting immediate visible results. Fat loss doesn't happen instantly, and it doesn't happen evenly. Belly fat, especially, takes time to respond. But internally, your body is changing. Insulin sensitivity improves. Metabolic flexibility increases. These changes are the foundation. If you stop too early, you interrupt the process before it can show results. So let me ask you one final question. What if the reason 16 hours of fasting hasn't worked for you is not because fasting doesn't work, but because no one showed you how to make those 16 hours actually matter? Because now you understand. You understand that fasting is not about time. It's about what your body is doing during that time. You understand that insulin, stress, food quality, and consistency determine everything. And once these are aligned, those 16 hours stop being a struggle and start becoming a tool that works with your body, not against it. If this changed the way you see fasting, don't just move on. Apply it. Fix your last meal. Clean your fasting window. Break your fast with intention. Stay consistent long enough to let your body respond. If you want a simple structure to follow, I've created a step-by-step fasting guide to help you apply this without confusion. You'll find it in the description below. Subscribe if you want to understand your body beyond trends, and finally, make fasting work the way it should. And share this with someone who feels stuck, because sometimes the difference between frustration and real progress is just one missing piece of understanding. This is not just about fasting. It's about finally working with your body instead of against it.